it was a struggle not to laugh. Which, because if we did, it only made it worse, and I'm pretty sure that's where his flick came from. He had a mean flick. It's like a boxer in just one finger. There was nothing you could get past him, no matter what. No matter how hard you tried. I mean, whether it was just tire tracks in the driveway, he was like a detective. He figured it out who was there. Or having a party and not getting away with it, no matter how hard we thought we did, good of a job we did. Now I realize that I really won't be able to hide anything from you, because I know you are and will be watching over me. So I want to apologize in advance for everything in the near future. You're going to be missed, but there's so many good memories. I wish I could go on and on, but I'm sure everybody would like to go home at some point. Love you, Dad.
Hi. Most of you know me as Carrie, but to Mitch, I was scary. So this is my 3 a.m. rambling. The man, the myth, the legend. Apparently it was just brought up that Mitch had a shirt that said that. He was our legend. And I looked up the definition of a legend: an extremely famous or notorious person, especially in a particular field. Fuel man. The man was a living legend. Mitch was our living legend. From the first time I met you, I knew you were here to stay. You brought laughter and love to our family, and you also shared your 3 beautiful kids to become our siblings, which I say we became the Brady Bunch that day. I could not have asked for a better partner, friend, husband for my mother-in-law, or a better stepdad, father, grandfather. I will never forget all the counseling sessions that you gave me on the way home from our outings, or just giving you a ride home. And I'm pretty sure I could use multiple more counseling sessions. There's been so many shenanigans to even go through in my memory that I can't just pick one. I know the kids will always remember the people's elbow, or waking up to eat steak at 3 o'clock in the morning. And the night that you brought Cody home. And let me tell you, it was not his dog, Cody, that he brought home. It was a random dog that Jason had to bring back to 10 High the next day. I love the way that we were able to speak to each other without saying a word during family functions. Usually I couldn't look at you for the fear of choking on whatever I was drinking or bursting out in laughter. Or even the time that you sent Deb out at 3 a.m. in the morning to yell at the boys while they were canoodling. There are so many things that I can say, but nothing can compare to the way you made us all feel. We were loved. You made us feel at home anytime you were near. And we knew you would always be there if and when we needed you, and usually with a few choice words to go along with that. You had no filter. You said it like it was. I will miss all the small things, like your eye roll, or you think you're cool? Or looking over your glasses at me and saying, really scary? Really? Also making fun of all of my hairstyles and colors, or asking me if I had boogers on my nose ring. to your smile and your laughter, picking on all of the kids, the grandkids, the great-grandkids, not to mention all of the nicknames. Sorry, Brantley, like Snapman or Robin. Every one of us had a nickname, and some that cannot be spoken in church. Boys. I guess what I want to say is thank you for being a huge part of my life for the last 28 and a half years and being by our sides when we needed you. We love you forever and always. This is never a goodbye. It's till we meet again. And as in Mitch true form, be groovy.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Aaron. Anybody else? Well, I know all one has to do is look at the pictures, whether you watch the pictures on the big screen or you've seen the pictures in the foyer. There's a lot more stories about Mitch than that. And a lot of you have got a heart full of memories, and we'll just cherish them. One more call before I move on to the next song. Let's hear that song then.
So common and well trod by the shoes of burning Christians who won't put their trust in God. They've been born of the Spirit, but they live by what they see. So they trust in their own effort, never living in belief. I'm not holding on to Jesus, He's holding on to me. He died and rose again and set me free. I am resting in the Spirit, not afraid of what will be. I'm not holding on to Jesus, He's holding on to me. In the heavy chains of fear, don't live another minute in the laws you're holding dear. The chains have all been shattered, the light is streaming in. You can't close your eyes forever to the one who lives within. I'm not holding on to Jesus, He's holding on to me. He died and rose again and set me free. I am resting in the Spirit, not afraid of what will be. I'm not holding on to Jesus, He's holding on to me. Jesus, He's holding on to me. He died and rose again and set me free. I am resting in the Spirit, not afraid of what will be. I'm not holding on to Jesus, He's holding on to me. I'm not holding on to Jesus, He's holding on to me.
When I consider the diversity of the crowd here today, it really says something about who Mitch was. He touched all of us, didn't he, in some way or another? Whether you're his classmate, he delivered fuel to you, or you were on the dance floor with him Friday or Saturday night someplace. His family members, he's touched every one of us somewhere along life's journey. I love these verses too that Aaron chose, because it talks about life's journey. Here's what it says, Ecclesiastes chapter 3, to everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. There is a time to be born and there is a time to die. But then Solomon, who wrote this, begins to unload on all the rest of the things of life. A time to plant, a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down, a time to build up, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance. He says a lot more. I'm going to end there. But there is a time and a purpose, the writer of Ecclesiastes said, a time and a purpose for everything under heaven. And Mitch touched us all in some time or purpose. When I've thought about Mitch over these last few days, I wasn't even in the state when he passed away. I got the call and said he had passed away. I and the church here had been praying for him. We knew he was sick, and then we got that call when we were away, and I thought about Mitch, and I thought about, how do you describe Mitch? His kids have described him. Carrie has described him. And I thought, if I came up with a word or two, what would they be? Mike would say, and Carrie said this too, unfiltered. That would maybe describe him pretty well. But one of the first things that came to my mind, and this has already been spoken to by Aaron, was dance moves. I guess that isn't a word, but a phrase. I only experienced Mitch's dance moves once at Ross and Sarah's wedding a while back. They were memorable, to be sure. As a matter of fact, we were enjoying the day outside, and we got into the reception area, and really things hadn't begun, and Mitch was already on the floor. And Sherry, my wife, graduated with him, so she's known him even longer than I have, and I said to her, we haven't even started yet. Actually, I wasn't sure if it was Mitch or Mike. But then you've been called. He was not Mitch called Mike. So. But anyway, the dance moves were memorable, to be sure. You know as well as I do, Mitch liked a good time. You know as well as I do, Mitch was straightforward. He said what was on his mind. He didn't pull any punches with you, and yet when he delivered fuel to us, he was nothing but professional. He did his job well. When you met him, you remembered him. He was very easy to like. You felt at ease in his company. And as his family has said, he made his presence known when he arrived. He always had a smile. And as I read earlier, if you ever met Mitch, you were a friend. To many of us, for years, he was our fuel man, bringing fuel to our farms or to our heating in our homes. We appreciated him for his service. We appreciated him for what he did. To many of you, he was much more. Your son, your brother, your husband, your dad, grandpa, brother-in-law. He's been so much to so many of us for so many years, but yet 62 is not that many years. Mitch has been around Motley a long time, most of his life. Not all of it, but most of it. He graduated right down the street with a lot of you. A lot of his classmates are here. He worked here. He lived here. He raised his family right here in this community we call Motley. We call it home. You've seen the pictures. You've heard the tributes. He loved the lake. He loved his family, his grandkids, great-grandkids at the lake, whether it was his super soaker that's laying back there on the table. He loved the atmosphere of the lake. He loved his family. I never knew him much to be a hunter, but you can see when you look at the pictures, there's a couple pictures. And as I have read, he enjoyed the deer hunting camp, but he didn't really hunt much. As a matter of fact, Deb reminds us that he probably hadn't even sighted his gun for years. He liked the social aspect of it. He liked the social aspect of a Vikings game or Twins game. He really enjoyed doing commentary on those games, and then perhaps afterwards doing commentary on his commentary. But there again, he liked those games to be with you, the social aspect of it. He probably didn't care who won or lost, really. He just liked being with you. Mitch was a good pool player. He played a lot of games. He was a fuel man to a lot of us. And as I read, he ended his career at Minnesota DOT in Wadena. He would have worked longer with the Department of Transportation. He would have been able to transfer to Motley in time. But cancer limited his career. He liked his Wadena crew, even though they called him Grandpa. And they teased him some when he came there about getting their work from the nursing home. He still liked his crew. But if you know Mitch, we know Mitch, he probably had a comeback. He probably had a reply for them. He was a fun, one-of-a-kind man who will be missed in our community. Life is like that, isn't it? A time to be born and a time to die. I'm going to read another verse for you that Aaron chose, and after I reminded myself of what the verse said, I thought, how appropriate it is. This particular verse is from Jesus. It comes from John 16:22. And he had just spoken to the disciples, and he told them he was going to die. He told them he's leaving. Of course, they didn't quite comprehend that, and sometimes I wonder if we do. Do we comprehend, do we process, do we even think about death? It is going to happen. A time to be born and a time to die. But John 16:22 says this. These are the words of Jesus to the disciples. He says, "Therefore you now have sorrow." But then he said this, "But I will see you again, and your heart will rejoice, and your joy no one will take from you." That's a good verse. This is a beautiful verse and promise from Jesus to all who know Christ. That this promise is sure. And I want to read these verses too. These verses that I'm going to read next, actually, Ross had a chance to read them at Mitch's bedside just a few days ago. And when Ross and Sarah told me that, I thought, I'm going to read them too. Now, on the surface, one would think these verses, Jim, they ain't that happy. The setting is the cross of Calvary, and Christ is going to the cross, and there's two guys, one on either side of him. And so we look at the surface of this and we think, this ain't that cheery. But the beautiful part of this is the end of the story. Let me read it for us. Luke 23 says, there were also two others. They were criminals led with Jesus to be put to death. They're all headed to Calvary. They're all headed to the cross. And when they had come to the place called Calvary, they crucified him. And they crucified the criminals. One on his right hand and the other on his left hand. And Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. And then as Luke explains what happened there on that hill that day, they divided his garments, peeled off his clothes, divided that amongst themselves, and the people stood there looking on, and the Jewish rulers, they were sneering at him, saying, he saved others, let him save himself, if he is the Christ. They ridiculed him, they mocked him, as the Son of God hung there, dying for us. The soldiers, Luke records, the soldiers mocked him too. They come and offered him sour wine, and they said, if you're the king of the Jews, save yourself. And there was this inscription written above his head in letters in Greek, Latin, and Hebrew, this is the King of the Jews. That's the sad part of the story. But then the story goes on and said, then one of the criminals who was hanging there ridiculed him, saying, if you are the Christ, save yourself and us. But the other criminal, the Bible says, now here, envision this, three guys hanging on a cross, moments from death, suffering in tremendous agony. The one is ridiculing him in saying, if you're really God's son, then save yourself and us. And the other one said, do you not even fear God, seeing that you are under the same condemnation? And then this second criminal says, and we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds. In other words, we're getting what we deserved. But this man, you see, something happened in this man's heart, this second criminal's mind and his heart. He recognized this man between us is innocent. And he said, but this man has done nothing wrong. And he turns to Jesus. And out of the humility of his heart, and the clarity of his mind, knowing he was moments from eternity, death and eternity, he said, Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus said to him, assuredly, I say to you today, you will be with me in paradise. Hallelujah. You see, friends, the criminals in this story, they had no hope. They were condemned to die. Until the one calls by faith upon the Son of God, purely and humbly out of faith, he turns to the Son of God who hung there right beside him on that cross, and he says, Lord. He knew who he was, and by faith he turns to him and he said, Lord, Remember me when you come into your kingdom. He knew who it was dying beside him. Nobody else there did. They blasphemed him. They mocked him. They ridiculed him. But this criminal simply said to him, Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom. These men crucified right beside Jesus were within hours or maybe even minutes of death and hell until he turned to Jesus by faith. Until the one called upon Jesus and said, Lord. And in that decision about Jesus, in that calling out to him by faith, everything changed for that guy hanging there on the cross. Everything changed for his eternity. And so let me say this to wrap up, friends. Jesus, nor I am asking any of you to get religion. Religion is good for us, but Jesus isn't a religion. Jesus is Lord, who died for all of us. Those two on those crosses that day, Mitch and all the rest of us. And if we ever plan to be part of God's heaven with Jesus, we must, as that criminal did that day, look upon him by faith and say, Lord, I need you too. We don't get to go to heaven on our own terms, you know. Jesus said this in John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave us his only begotten Son, that whoever believes on him, that's his terms, whoever believes on him, the Son of God, shall not perish, but have everlasting life. And so this whoever believes on him, friends, simply means I have embraced him by faith, just like the criminal on the cross. I have embraced him by faith. That's God's terms.